Good. All right.
All right,
So it
I'll build
is.
the slides now.
We're rolling. So yeah, load up your presentation and take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Lopez. I'm Brandon Lopez. Hey, you're muted. Yeah, let me something quick and back to the start. Yeah. Well, I'm Brandon Lopez, and I and my brother are here to do a presentation on game design and development. So, let's start. So, the content in today's lesson is architecture and game development. Different jobs, same perspectives. Then we have doors. And then we have scripting in you and how programming is the work of the insane, gunpoint creativity, and the false ideology of the idea guy. Specialists versus generalists and how it could save your potential game dev career. AAA versus indie dev, how to get started, and an Ask Us Anything, and some fun facts about surviving college. So, first topic, architecture and game dev. Different jobs, same perspectives. To start, you would make a blueprint. What each room is, what furniture is in it, what windows, what does everything connect to in that room. So things like that are very similar to game development. But instead, we don't really use it. We have some sort of version of using a blueprint, but it would mostly depend on what kind of game you're making. For starters, a storyline, what events happen in the game, characters. Then you'll need to make some rooms and levels for the players to navigate, what NPCs and enemies that these players may encounter. And, you'll also need a layout to lay out the logic for your code and the certain mechanics that your game is going to have. Yeah. So our next one is doors. So I'd like all of you to take a minute to think about what the purpose of a door is in a video game. Or some sort of if you made a game, would you have a door in it? And if so, what would that door do?
The door would most likely be used for a cutscene. Would be used for a cutscene either started or ended, or just be used to enter a different area at the game or the room.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, you sound better.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So doors in video games would be used for the character to either enter into a cutscene or exit out of a cutscene, or be used to enter a certain area of the game, or either to enter a certain area of the game or enter a different building in the game.
Right.
Doors could also be used for, well, as seen in Dark Souls,
Right.
as the gateway to a boss.
Right, to a boss level. So I believe a minute has passed, so let's go to the end result. So the end result is that the player didn't even know the door was there. And this is a very major conundrum that a lot of test players go through when they when you sort of tell them there's an objective in that sort of game and they don't see it, right? So as we can see in our example here, this player here thinks that the fire extinguisher is going to put him out, when in reality that is simply a prop. It's not going to put him out at all. And as a result, the player is going to die. So sometimes it's rather frustrating to see players do that because you sort of sometimes think, how do they get this far in life without being this oblivious? But sometimes as a game developer, this highlights how hard your game can be, and sometimes you may need to make your objectives more obvious and more easier for the player to understand, so that you don't get the certain urge to basically throw them off the gaming chair and do it yourself. unless you get a kick out of seeing people fail. Otherwise, play Getting Over It, a game that a lot of influencers have played and have had many mental breakdowns. Next slide. So here's our next activity, gunpoint creativity. So take a minute, and I mean a minute, right? Yes, I am rage. So, take a minute to come up with an idea that no one has come up with or has not been done, or, something that no one has said. So take a minute to write this down, and, your prize is bragging rights. So, yeah. So in 3, 2, 1, just get the timer ready. I don't know why I didn't have this prepared, and go.
And just remember, the idea doesn't have to be major and come with the whole story. Just just a general idea, this, or Crowbar the game or something.
All right, you guys got 10 seconds left. 5 more, and it's done. All right. So, present us some of your ideas.
Well, I could see a few in chat, and we have one from William. A game where you're a wizard and you can make any spell you desire with any attributes. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. And Mr. Kessler said feeding pigeons. Hey, that could actually be a good game too. Godfather as a game. I mean, there were already 3 of them, but yeah. Wait, no, just those 3 movies. I think there's a Godfather game. Is there?
No, it's Mafia.
There is definitely
Oh,
a
yeah.
Godfather.
Then we have Life of a Chicken, Harry Potter knockoff, simulators, sadness.
I have an idea.
All right.
Work as a census worker.
Census worker. Huh.
Wow, that was actually something we have there. Yeah.
Please, who would play that? College readiness game. Codio's Revenge.
Yes. Well, anyway, next slide.
Yep. And
so, like we said earlier, no stupid idea is a bad one.
I never said that earlier, but I mean, no stupid idea is really a bad one. I mean, look at this. You have a game that is literally about watching paint dry. You have games like Gary's Mod where you can make games in them. You have Untitled Goose Game. You are a goose that is specifically there to just piss off the NPCs. So, this brings us to the next point. Don't be a follower, be a leader. Sometimes you have an idea and you want to put it out there. It's great to make sure to just set the field and just put it out there. Don't try and be, well, I mean, in this case, we have a bunch of Battle Royale games because Fortnite was the one who actually was the leader and set a trend, and that, look at how many companies followed. You have 2 from EA, 1 from Activision, and what was this one again, Kyle?
Ubisoft Battle Royale.
Oh, okay.
And so, the point here is, don't be a follower, be a leader, be original. Next slide. So, don't surround yourself by yes people either. So this means it's good to contest other people's ideas. It's good to be critical about other people's ideas. Don't say an idea and have 5 people say, you know what, that's a great idea, right? They're not going to help you build and structure that idea, right? If you want to make a good game, it's always about having a second opinion, right? It's kind of like being a graphic designer making an advertisement. You always have to have somebody telling you what is right, what is wrong, and what does the customer want. Focus groups. So, yeah. Next slide. So now let's talk about being a specialist versus being a generalist in the day of the life of a game developer. So, as a specialist, you are usually, so usually as a specialist, you are good at one thing, and that one thing could be anything. It could be making really good stories. It could be making really good 3D models. It could be making very great buildings. It could be building really great worlds, right? Or it could be you're a great programmer, right? So that's one way of being a specialist. And
However, on the other hand, we have a generalist, someone who's good at everything, but they're not exactly the best. They can understand programming, they can understand modeling, they can understand a piece of everything, but they can't make it better than their peers. Which is why specialists are great around generalists, because if a generalist is trying to make something, a specialist is always there to tell them this is what you should do, and you can make it better by doing this. Generalists can also get a lot of legwork done, but they will always ask for help when they need it. But generally, they also have resources at their disposal, like the internet in general. And if they run into a problem and there's no one there who's particularly, they know what that problem is, there's always someone on the internet who's run into it before.
So yeah, those are basically specialists versus generalists. So now let's talk about AAA versus indie. So as you can see, some of these game development companies you probably know: Nintendo, Activision, Blizzard, DICE, Valve, right? So these are the big boys. These are the guys who make the $60 games that you're going to buy because it's amazing, right? So let's talk about indie developers. Out of a raise of hands, who here knows who Team Reptile is? I'm going to take that. One person here knows. So, Team Reptile is an indie development company that made Lethal League and Lethal League. Usually, most of these companies make a single game and could possibly make it or break it. Innersloth. Does anybody know who Innersloth is?
Yeah.
What would they be famous for? Obviously,
Among Us.
Among Us, right? They took a game and they made it. Do you know how long that game has been out?
Like 2 years.
Yep, it only took until now. After 2 years of making this game and completely rethinking about scrapping this game, they saw how much popularity it got and it instantly boomed. So, that's the miracles of being an indie developer. Making and breaking it is the core piece, the sort of the deciding factor of whether you are a successful game developer.
Does anybody know what company Running with Scissors is responsible for?
I've heard of it, but I don't know the exact game.
Kodio's Revenge.
Okay.
It could have been Kodio's Revenge, but it's something. Have you guys ever heard of Postal? Postal 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're also indie development companies that just have games that are. Well, Running with Scissors is a very special case. Their one niche has been Postal. This could also be said for Scott Cawthon, who's only been. Ian knows what I'm talking about. And this could also be said for Scott, who's only made things about Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't think I've ever seen anything else from him that's been not Five Nights at Freddy's related. But I guess this will take us to our next subject, which is scripting in you, how to talk to your computer. This is a particular part of game development that I'm interested in. I really want to be able to understand how to program and how to make a game do something, and I feel like it's not about what the computer's showing, but it's about what it's doing in the background to make that thing happen that's the best. So, programming, scripting, math, logic, programming is, in literal terms, characters that do stuff. You write functions and other things. You use this to tell the computer or engine that you're working with to what you want it to do, and when a script is run. And mostly in the most general sense, programming is like learning a new language. Programming, you also have a wide variety of languages to pick from. Speaking of languages, some notable ones are C#, C++, Python, and then you have some easier ones. Then you have engine-specific ones like GD script and Java. And there could also be as easy as Ruby, which, from what I've heard from my peers, that Ruby, you literally could probably take a paragraph from an essay and it could probably do something. And then there's Python, which is also really easy to get the hang of. And then you have more interesting standards like C++, C#. Yeah. And each language there's always something different about it. Whether it's more beefy and able to handle a lot more complex situations, or it's just really easy to get the hang of. They all have something unique about them. And now, programming doesn't come without its downsides. I'm sure when you hear game development, you're familiar with the term bugs. Yeah. They are not fun to deal with, which is why one of the points that I brought up earlier about being a generalist, the internet is your best tool to have at your disposal, because it's really essential to make sure that you have somewhere to go and ask people for help. It's great. And if you don't know how to make something, the internet is also there to tell you, hey, there's a guide on this, and I can show you how to make it. And then in the future, if you ever need help doing that one thing again, it's always there. And I guess that brings us to our next point. Do you want to if any of you want to get started, what should you do first? So here's some tips on just getting started with game development. So here are some of the aforementioned engines that I used earlier when we were talking. So we have Unreal, we have Unity, and we have Godot. Each engine also uses its own language, as I previously discussed, like GD script, and Unity uses C#, and not every engine can use every single coding language. Unreal uses C++. Unity only uses C#. Godot uses GD script, but it also natively supports C#. So you have to make sure that you know what coding language you're going to be using when you use one of these engines. And if you want to get into game development, especially at SUNY Canton, the college that I and my brother go to, start off with Godot. And it has a manual that is incredibly useful and has tutorials and all that fun stuff. And you can just get started on making the first year project, which would be Dodge the Creeps. It's a fun little game where you just dodge around and dodge enemies, and there's videos on it, and especially in the guide. And the next thing is, what if you're more of a designer like my brother Kyle? This is where things like Photoshop, Aseprite, and Pascal come in, where if you want to make 8-bit assets, 16-bit assets, or just draw stuff, you could use Aseprite and Pascal. They are really good at what they do. I used Aseprite in a project. It really helped a lot. And Pascal, I didn't use it, but I know that some of my peers used it, and they made some really useful stuff as well. Photoshop is for something that's a little more or less 8-bit. You can make a little more complex things with it. But generally, when you're working in 2D, it'll be 8-bit or something along those lines. Next up, if you're more into 3D, Maya, Blender, and Substance are the three biggest 3D modeling engines out there. And I am sure that because this is WHSAD, and you guys used AutoCAD, and I know that at least most of you, the seniors, if there are any in this call right now, have gotten their certification by now, or if they haven't, then please work on that. But Maya shouldn't be too difficult to get the hang of. And it's an Autodesk program, so some shortcuts like copying, pasting, and other things among that are easy to get the hang of. Then we have Blender, which is great for animating and making. If you're working on a first-person shooter, it is great for animating first-person animations like radio loading a weapon, using a spell, things like that. And then Substance is, I guess you could say, it's the best of both worlds.
It technically is the best of everything, and so is Maya and Blender. These are all 3D modeling engines. They all have their own little unique quirks that you can use with them, but I think Substance is great at animating textures and usually like 3D meshing textures. So it's more of like a physics 3D texture sort of engine. So yeah, those are like the three to sort of familiarize yourself with. So yeah, this is the end of our presentation. We hope you guys enjoyed this, and we didn't bore you guys out of your minds. If you have no questions, or you didn't listen at all, that's cool. But if you do with a small amount of time, if you want to ask us anything, or if we do have a small time frame and this meeting I guess is over or something, you can email us at our actual education emails. So yeah.
All right, so everyone, if you guys could start writing your questions in the chat or begin raising your hands. I saw Megan raise her hand, so Megan Golden.
Okay. Is Substance free?
I would assume. Let me find out, because I think it's made by Adobe. So
it may not be free because Adobe.
Yeah, it may not be free because sometimes Adobe is very greedy.
Yes, I agree with that statement.
Ooh, Makai.
No, it's fine, Healy.
Dover.
Hi, I was curious, what are some assignments like for students with your major?
Well, assignments in game development can be, we mostly work on projects. It's not like how in Codio's class, it's use this tool and submit it by the end of the week. It's make this game, and I want it by the end of the semester. That's how it was for me this time around, and when you go in for your first year, the professor who teaches that, which is Ryan Hewer, he's the best, and anyway, the assignments that he assigns are really simple in retrospect, and he will usually give you a few weeks to complete them. But every single assignment he gives you in the first year has a guide to complete it, and it gets a little more harder because he starts leaving out some details that you have to figure out on your own.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kevin Garcia has a question.
What would you recommend to start working with when it comes to the first-person games?
If you want to make a first-person shooter, really it's whatever you're thinking. If you want to use Godot, then do some Python. Then do some Python, and I'm sure there's a guide on YouTube that's just strictly how to create a basic first-person shooter. If you want something a little more, this is definitely the route to take, then that would be Unity. Though if you're in for a challenge, C++ is the way to go. But for me, if you want to make a first-person shooter, use Unity. There are a lot of fun assets you can get. Like if you're bad at modeling and you want a gun, just go on the Unity Asset Store. There's a ton of free stuff that you can use on the Unity Asset Store, and it is super useful to just go there and pick about what's there.
No guns, no guns.
Thank you.
Oh, well, yeah.
So,
I mean, in a video game, it's fine, Kodo.
well, I mean, you're not wrong, Mr. Rodriguez, but yeah, if you're bad at modeling stuff, you can find assets on the store, and it's pretty easy to get your hands on them. So you shouldn't really have to worry about that. Yes, bows and arrows.
A first-person shooter doesn't have to be all weapons, all guns and whatever. It could also be like literally just whacking people with the shovel. War bat, yeah. You have melee weapons. Medieval first-person shooter, exactly, Ian.
Mordhau is actually a really good one.
Yeah. So any other questions?
Yamilet Rosario asked a question in the chat just so that it doesn't get lost. She said, how did you know that's the major you really want to pursue?
All right. Well, the reason that I chose game development as my major was there's a game that I really like, and it's called Team Fortress 2. Now, I'm not going to get into what the game is, but the company who's behind it makes a lot of wonderful projects, and just seeing what the communities that have seen those projects do, it's amazing. It's really fun, and I really want to be involved in game development because just to build a community around something I've made and just seeing people just enjoy what you made is a feeling that I like. So, yeah.
Thank you. You could go. I'm sorry.
I mean, I was gonna answer the question too. I still want to go into game development, but I think I previously said earlier that I had switched my major to graphic design. And the thing is that not every game development program is solid. Not every game development major is going to be exactly what you expect it to be. I didn't expect, the game development major in SUNY Canton to be more specifically like the jack of all trades. I didn't expect to learn everything, right? I expected to be given more of like a path. Like you want to design, go the design route, or you want to program, go to the program route. But unfortunately, since the SUNY Canton major is so young, it's only 2 years old. So not a lot of design courses are incorporated. However, I do have intel from the graphic design teacher that the graphic design teachers and the game development teachers have been talking to incorporate both majors into each other. So graphic design students will be able to mingle with game development students. So if that's something you wanted to know, if you were considering going to the school, it's a good time to think about it now. I'm seeing some other questions. How did you prepare in high school for your major? Did you take college courses or summer classes?
Yeah, that's my question.
So we went to a trade school called Co-op Tech, and I believe some of you may be familiar with that. And if not, in senior year, if you guys become seniors, that may be an option for you guys. And for half of the school day, I would go in the afternoon to Co-op Tech, and I learned Photoshop, and I kind of discovered my how do I say this? I sort of discovered my unsheathed power that I did not know that I had, and I just make really good posters and really good advertisements. So, I mean, I've gotten pretty good over the last couple of semesters, and I had to make some too. So, I guess if you would consider being prepared for my college major, it was going to Co-op Tech and learning Photoshop. But still, with certifications overall, you still get that.
I'd also say the same as Kyle. There was an A+ class that they offered at Co-op Tech as well, but I couldn't take that due to time constraints. But nevertheless, the Photoshop class is extremely useful if you want to understand how to just design stuff and understand how to make assets and make posters and just get the general concept of how to design something and really get your creative gears moving. Because when you go into the major, you're gonna want to have ideas that you're gonna want to get out there. But yeah.
So a question that I see from Lane's Barth. Sorry if I butchered that.
It's fine.
What?
It's fine. It happens.
Oh, okay. So what type of projects do you recommend for students entering this field? I would suggest doing simple 2D programs because that's going to allow you to sort of familiarize yourself with the code. It's not too hard. It's not too easy. And it's going to get you started. It's not going to be like super hard. It's not going to ask you to make a whole freaking, AAA development game and everything. No, it's just a simple little point and click game or something, something simple, right? That's where you want to start off. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
But to also answer the same question, there are also a lot of tutorials on YouTube that you can look at that also offer, whether it be 2D or 3D. I mean, really, you don't have to start at any particular plane anywhere. You could do a 2D game, and it could be as advanced as anything, or it could do a simple point-and-click 3D game. But YouTube and the internet, if you want to learn great tutorials, that's the best place to go if you want to learn. If you want to hit the ground running in the major, just have a project ready and just familiarize yourself with how to program and just basic functions. And I guess another question we have here is, what were some setbacks through the process? Oh boy. If I had to speak from experience, bugs and not understanding the logic. Bugs are the absolute most frustrating thing to ever deal with. Sometimes your programming, your script could look perfect, but somehow, some way, you screwed it up and you don't know how. And that could be a huge setback, especially if you don't understand how to work around the bug, or if you have nobody around to ask. So I would also turn to the internet, and sometimes even the internet takes a while and they don't know what the problem is, so you really do feel stuck at times. And I guess that's how I'd answer that question. And I guess another question I see here is, why does it take a while for games to grow in popularity? Is it the lack? Where did the question go? Oh, there it is. Is it the lack of marketing or something else? Well, Dimitri, in Leighton terms, a lot of games come out on Steam every single day. 160 was the statistic that I seen that's how many games come out a day. So pretty much, if you want your game to be a hit, you have to compete against about 100 other people to make sure to see if your game's going to make it. Which is why Among Us took so long to really gain popularity. It was a small game, and it didn't take off until just some random streamer was like, hey, this is a fun game to play, and then everyone started playing it. It's kind of random. You could be at the very front of the line and get a lot of people at first and then watch your game slowly die down in popularity, or it could be like you start with nobody but then gain a lot of popularity over time and then it just explodes at one point. And I wouldn't say it's a lack of marketing. It's just because from my teacher's experience, I remember that there was a game that he had. It was called Deep Sixth. He claims it was a really good game. It was mechanically really built well. However, it was not received well, and it wasn't marketed and he marketed it, but it didn't really get anywhere. But that was from his experience. So it really is just random whether your game is going to come off with a lot of traction. But it's best to just wait and see where it takes you. And another question was, have you used software Blender? Well, that's a question for Kyle. I can certainly say with confidence I haven't used it.
I've dabbled in it a little bit, but that was literally just looking at the UI and having no idea what to do. So, I mean, I have the program. I haven't used the program, but to many, it's kind of hard, which is why a lot of people would recommend that you start off with something simpler, like Maya or ZBrush or Substance. So, I think it's more of like if you're really good at using Maya, then it would be a good time to consider, hey, let me try Blender out and see how it works. In fact, I think a lot of people at Activision and Blizzard have been using Blender to make reload animations. And reload and animating is a very big part in Blender's engine. So if you really like moving things in software, it's Blender might be for you. So I guess another question is, what favorite project game is something that we worked on? So I actually have a favorite one, and this one was actually sort of funny because I some people thought I made it to piss off my teacher, but I didn't. It was literally built that way. So we were told to make a Simon game from scratch. So that would mean having to code, the buttons, the rhythm patterns, and all that stuff, and the random RNG, the random number generator, and all that stuff. So we had to do that, and but instead of my game having to focus on what color is glowing, it's more of what the pattern is. So it would, and also the buttons were moving. So I named it CIA Torture Project. Because of how annoying it was to click a button and then have it interrupted with another button that would be right in front of it. So, yeah, and it's funny because I got an 80 out of somebody else who actually got a lower grade than me and is smarter than me in the class. So, yeah, a project you liked, Brandon?
I guess a game that I made that I liked as a project would probably have to be. We work on a game in the class called Fox Force 5. It's basically you make a side-scroller game. It was probably one of the most challenging ones for me, but I got a lot of help with it, and it came out pretty okay. It's fun to work around in Godot. It also really showcased how fun it is to make it really shows how fun it is to make just 2D games in Godot, and how it's not real. My friends also say that Godot is just better for 2D games, and their point really stands out when you make Fox Force 5. It's fun to use the world editor and just work around in there and have a lot of fun making the level. Then there's also mechanics that you have to incorporate, and just making sure that your character moves, and it really was. I liked it because it provided me a really big challenge. Yeah.
So I guess another question from Sonia. She says, I guess this is more of a question directed at me. When I started my new major, how was it, and did I expect it to be the way that was it the way I expected? Yes, it was the way I expected it to go, where I was starting to learn the programs that I was supposed to be learning. So, Photoshop. I think this semester I'll be learning 3D animation. No, actually, I'll be learning video editing and After Effects. So that's going to be fun to do. And also, more beyond that, I'll be learning how to animate and, do more post video After Effects and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm on a pretty good path. So, yeah, I guess just to answer that question, I guess any other questions that we missed? I guess not much. I mean, yeah, I guess any other questions?
Wait, Kyle, I have a question actually.
Yeah, sure.
Remember you had your sister also in the game industry? How is that?
So surprisingly enough, she is no longer in the game development industry, and in fact, actually, when she graduated from that school, Savannah College of Art and Design. That's actually a really great school. She graduated from the game development with the game development degree, but she actually found a job in augmented reality and communications. So she works for a company called Graphics, and they are a company who makes graphics for sports TV shows and like
They do a lot of lives.
yeah, they do like a lot of live TV show stuff. So I think she actually had recently went to Abu Dhabi or I think like where is that, like Saudi Arabia, I think it is, and she went all the way out there to actually use their technology to use augmented reality for a UFC fight. So basically, all the graphics you see when you go in when the show comes back on, my sister is responsible for basically 80 to 90% of what you're seeing. Is she pivoted to a related field? Well, I mean, she is a graphic artist. So in graphic design, yes. I guess that would be her field at the very moment. Yeah.
Hi. I just really quickly want to ask you a question.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, what do you think the skill curve is like, and how would you describe your experience going along this curve? Also, do you think most people get into this industry because of their passions or monetary aspects? And if it's from passion, is monetary or is money more of a side product?
Wow. Okay, that's a big question. So I guess we'll start with your curve question first. Yes, there is a very interesting learning curve. You're going to want to be, if you're a fast learner, this is something you'll be very used to. If you're a slow learner like me, you'll probably fall into the conundrum of having to, basically struggle with programming and not actually understand it. There was a bit of schedule errors with my thing for the first semester, so it's probably that. But yeah, there is a definite learning curve that you're going to want to get used to, and that is preparing to learn programming, and it is preparing to familiarize yourself with the programs like Maya, GD Script, and Godot, and Unity, and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess what was your second question? It was whether people did it for the money or passion.
Yeah, basically.
So it's to some, it's like to a very small percent, it's probably for the money, but to a lot of people, it is for the passion. It is for the, like my brother said, making something and having a ton of people love you for it. It hits the heart really well, and it makes you want to keep going. That's the drive that a lot of game developers have. It's when your product or your game goes really far, and you've made it. Basically, you've achieved heaven in that point. Well, what are some of my favorite video games? Oh well, did I finish your question, Matthew? I'm sorry.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. And that advice should really be taken to EA.
Yeah, definitely to EA.
Yeah. I guess if I had to also answer your question, Matthew, the learning curve is it's sort of subjective. If you're not the math heavy type of person, definitely start like that learning curve is going to hit you really hard if you're not the math type of person. Which is why I really suggest if you really want to get into this industry, you have to start learning some code and just get onto that. But if math, logic, and all that fun stuff if you're used to that, it's not that hard for you, then that learning curve is going to be like nothing. You're basically programming is just writing a bunch of functions, and it's not even going to be that hard. Working with your first engine, that being Godot, if you go to our school. But if I had to answer the passion part, it really depends on where you go to work. But if I had to say, if you're in it more for the money, you're definitely going to go more towards a AAA company like Nintendo or EA especially. But if you're like really passionate and you just really like it if you want to get into the industry to make things and have an audience that will look at what you made and just be like, wow, this is really great, and just enjoy what you made, indie development is your avenue. Though you don't have to be an indie developer to have passion. You could also work at a AAA company and just say, hey, I love to make this stuff, even if I'm getting like paid a good amount of money for it. I mean, hey, sometimes you're not even working a day in your life if you love what you do, you know? And if I had to answer...
Well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if I had to answer what my favorite games are, Team Fortress 2, Minecraft, some of the classics, I guess. Postal is fun, but I wouldn't count it among my favorites, but it's notable. But yeah, that's it for me. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Ethan.
Hi.
I want to ask, what do you think is the largest obstacle you have faced in your future career?
For me, largest obstacle as far as my future career is concerned, definitely deciding if I'm going to take an indie developer route or a AAA developer route. I really want to do AAA because not only it's the safest, but it's also great if you're the type who's like, I want to be a specialist and be niche at one thing. Because AAA companies seek out a lot of specialists. Though it's also dangerous if you're a specialist, but you're not really good at that thing you specialize in. Like if you're not the tip top, the best, because they could always just say, oh, hey, there's someone better than you. Go on and just get out. But if you're more of an indie developer, it's probably a little bit less of a safer route, but it depends on the quality of the game and how you get it out there. Like I said, it could be random, but if you put it out there enough and market it well, you'll definitely gain some traction.
To answer Joshua's question, that would be, once again, Team Fortress 2. The Valve games sort of really got us into this. Portal, Half-Life, Left 4 Dead. It was kind of funny how I found out about Team Fortress 2 anyway, but I'm not going to get into that. Yes, oh my god, CSGO. I play CSGO to this day, and it's so much fun. Especially if you don't play Nuke, you're not a global league player. But whatever, I'm just kind of memeing out right now. But yeah, Valve games are just sort of the pinnacle of, true game development and how time is. Yes, I have tried Valorant. I don't like Valorant because it's just CSGO, but with Overwatch elements. I'm not going to go on about Overwatch because Overwatch is already a mess. I don't need to bash it. Yeah, I don't need to bash it, but whatever. But yeah, I guess that just seems to be all of our questions. Any questions anymore, or is?
Thank you guys so much.
Oh well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean it's a pleasure coming back here and telling you guys about our adventures in game development and trying this new thing that we thought would go very well, but in some way has gone terribly for us. But it's had its ups and downs, and it has truly kind of transformed me and Brandon in a very creative way, and we learned how to deal with that kind of stuff, and now we're ready for the industry now, and we kind of feel like we know what to expect now. But yeah.
Thank you for taking a time to speak to all of us today. Really appreciate it.